So delighted to welcome all of you. My name is John Chung, and on behalf of the PPIC Board of Directors, and let me take a moment to acknowledge a couple of my other colleagues, Cassandra Pai. Cassandra, please wave, thank you. And Rusty Arias. Rusty's too busy talking to Steve Peace from their legislative days. I am pleased to welcome you to the second event in our 2026 speaker series that PPIC is hosting this year on California's future. We are absolutely delighted, and I'm personally thrilled to have this incredible group of panelists. You're going to listen to some of the most formidable actors and thought leaders in the state of California. We have from PPIC our Director of Economic Policy Center, Sarah Bone. A colleague when I served, formidable, thoughtful, passionate, the Honorable Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher, who heads the California Labor Federation as their president, and also a very important actor from the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, their CEO and president, Lance Hastings. And then PPIC is blessed an incredible staff and group, and then we have a fearless leader, highly accomplished, inherent with dignity, served admirably 12 years as the Chief Justice for the state of California, the Honorable Tani Cantil-Sakaue. As I mentioned, this is part of our 2026 speaker series. This would not be possible without people with incredible vision and foresight and the wherewithal to do something special. We want to thank the donors who make this possible. For those of you who belong to the Golden State Society, to those of you who belong to the PPIC Business Council, those of you who are foundation donors and supporters, thank you, thank you, thank you. These donors make this programming and other programming possible. As you know about PPIC's programming, it is free and it is accessible in a federal democratic republic. It's important that we have these opportunities to join together to discuss important issues as we want to shape our future. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with PPIC, let me share a little bit of information. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit policy research institute with offices both in San Francisco and Sacramento. As a public charity, PPIC does not take positions on any ballot measures or legislation, nor do we support, endorse, or oppose any political parties or candidates. Importantly, and I hope all of you will take advantage, at the conclusion of today's formal panel session, we're going to take questions. That's an opportunity for you to be involved and ask those things that hopefully enhances all of our knowledge. For those of you here in Sacramento, please raise your hand. We have plenty of our terrific PPIC staff. They will come and hand you the microphone. Those of you who are joining online, please email your questions to ppiceventquestions@gmail.com. Let me say that again. I said a little bit fast. ppiceventquestions@gmail.com. They'll be monitoring, and they'll make sure to try to include your question in our program. And lastly, if you have not silenced your phone, please do so at this moment. Now, I have the incredible privilege of welcoming our incredible moderator and our fearless leader, Tani.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Round of applause for John. I think all of us can say that when John Chung was controller and treasurer in California, we all watched and learned, listened, and advanced the state. So thank you, John, for your public service, and thank you and all of our other board members here who are present for this speaker series event. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for attending. It's your presence that makes this event so successful for PPIC. And I want to extend a special thank you to our students here from C.K. McClatchy High School and their professor, and Ellen Wong, our consultant. And they're here with a wave. Give us a wave of where you are. Thank you for being here. We've encouraged and advised them that when the Q&A period begins, they get to have the first question of the panelists. So panelists, I know you're on the edge of your seat. Beware, the students' questions are very piercing, if you ask me. As John has introduced our panelists, I am just going to give a very brief introduction, but their extensive and impressive biographies can be found on our website, and I encourage you to look at them because all three have been incredible people who've served and led the state of California and are tireless in their work in serving California's public. So I'll give a brief introduction in alphabetical order. Sarah Bone. Sarah is Vice President and a Senior Fellow at PPIC, and she is the founding director of our Economic Policy Center. She holds the John and Louise Bryson Chair in Policy Research, and as a labor economist, she focuses on the job market, workforce skills, and the role of education and government in upward mobility. She has expertise in many other areas, including helping to work and form the California Poverty Measure with Caroline Danielson, our Vice President of Research, who's in here somewhere, along with Stanford. Sarah has been published in numerous major academic journals and holds a PhD from the University of Maryland, College Park. Thank you, Sarah. I'm pleased to announce and introduce to you someone who needs little introduction, but I'm going to give a short bio description of Ms. Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher. President Gonzalez Fletcher is the president of the California Federation of Labor Unions, the AFL-CIO. She is the first woman and first person of color to be elected as its president. She's dedicated her career to expanding workers' rights through organizing, politics, and legislation. When she was a state legislator, Assemblywoman Gonzalez Fletcher achieved groundbreaking advances for millions of working Californians. She is the current national co-chair of the AFL-CIO State Federation AI Task Force. President Gonzalez Fletcher is a graduate of Stanford University, earned a master's degree from Georgetown University, and a law degree from UCLA. Let's welcome President Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher. It is my delight to introduce to you Lance Hastings, who has led many, many marquee organizations. He is the president of and CEO of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, the CMTA, or as we all say in Sacramento, the manufacturers. Before joining CMTA, he served as Miller Coors Vice President of National Affairs. And prior to that, in other leadership positions, he was the Senior Director for State Affairs at the Grocers Manufacturers of America. He has also served as legislative staff in the legislature. He's active on numerous boards and was appointed to the California Future of Work Commission by Governor Newsom. In addition to his BA, President Hastings has an MBA from California State University, Sacramento. Please again welcome these distinguished panelists. My first question is to all three of you in order, and then we'll jump around a bit. But the first question for all of you to think about is to please assess the health of California's economy. And what gives you confidence about that health, or what makes you worry about California's economy? Sarah.
I would say California's economy is surprisingly resilient, considering what we've been through from the pandemic to federal policy changes over the past year to the onset of AI and what that might do to our economy. We're relying on our fundamentals, and we're relatively kind of stable. That's a little bit of a surprise to many economists out there who predicted recessions at various points over the past 6 years. Not myself, but some of my colleagues. So, I think that's good. We have a lot of fundamental strengths in California. What makes me worry is that we're also a bit stagnant, or maybe the other side of the coin from resilient. Our jobs have not been growing quickly. And we really need economic growth to expand opportunity in the state to more entrepreneurs, to more workers, to more families. And that's one of the big concerns that I have looking forward.
Thank you. So resilient in the face of some feelings out there, but also worried about stagnation in our economy. Lorena.
You know, the economy, if you look at it not in terms of its people, but in terms of money, is incredibly strong. And that is, you know, told to us over and over again. And I think that's true. We have an incredible amount of resources, financial resources in the state. What concerns me and what keeps me up at night is, and I mean, I've been saying this for years, and yet, like, it gets worse, is the growing income inequality between those who actually have those resources and control of those resources and those who those resources continue to be taken from. On top of that, if you look at what is happening, especially with unemployment with college graduates, I think that's something that is a bright yellow light for us. California leads the nation in unemployment, but that is really being driven by that kind of 22 to 27-year-olds who have a college degree. And that, for us, is not us in labor. You know, often we're talking a little bit more about working class folks, but that is an indication that we're going to continue to have this kind of separating out, which used to be lower and working class folks from those who were upper middle and beyond. Now I think that the bottom is growing in its numbers and its strength.
Thank you for that insight. When you talk about income inequality, we sort of have assumptions about that, but you've also now just seen a different kind of income inequality with the different college degrees and not moving as high or as much. Thank you. So Lance, your response?
I always start off by saying the state of the economy is actually based upon the temperature of manufacturing, because manufacturing is the economy. Without a strong manufacturing base, you're not going to be able to have those opportunities in the Golden State for the future, which I'm glad the students are here today to be part of that future. But manufacturing is at the core of the state's economy. And if the sector were strong and stable, we would be able to avoid a lot of the fiscal challenges with deficits and surpluses that we've experienced over the last couple of years. So my plug is for a strong manufacturing sector. The state of the sector in the economy is kind of like a medical patient. I'd love your comment, Sarah. Patient looks good, heartbeat's probably right where it should be, but the underlying part of the patient is not healthy, and that's the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. The infrastructure of the state of California is at a point of potential breakage, and if we don't address those issues in the very quick term, we're going to have a much harder time, and if this conference were had 5 years from now, it might be a different answer. Mm-hmm. And when I talk about infrastructure, it's not just roads, bridges, highways, water, the electric grid. It's also our human infrastructure. We need to make investments in our people so that they can pursue whatever kind of career they want, including careers in manufacturing, which sometimes and sadly over the course of time have been lowered in terms of their expectations of their societal acceptance. We have some of the best paying jobs available to any Californian, from the shop floor to the C-suite, and we ought to encourage that as much as we can. But the patient's in pretty good shape. But if you look at the prognosis, it's not as healthy as I would like to see it.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, like, if the infrastructure, if the manufacturers were stronger. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later.
Perfect.
I appreciate that foreshadowing. So this is more of a level-setting question, Sarah, for our labor economist. There are indicators, and we've talked a little bit about them, that reflect that the California economy may be in good shape. So the patient's looking good from these different early tests. Yet, in recent PPI surveys, Californians have serious anxiety about their personal finances and California's economic future. So how do we reconcile that the patient's looking pretty good, but inside the patient's feeling serious anxiety about their own finances and their future?
It's such a good question, one that we've been wrestling with at the Economic Policy Center for years now, and really since the pandemic. The aggregate indicators that we look at are pretty okay. To use a technical term, like job growth is, somewhat positive in the state. We'll see, it might get revised downward in a couple of weeks when new numbers come out, but, not losing jobs across the board. Unemployment is higher in California than other places, but, in historical terms is still lower than the kind of average we've seen over the last 25 years. Stock market, of course, booming, notwithstanding some of the recent volatility due to the Iran war. Even earnings, if you look at the average hourly earnings of a California worker, and after accounting for inflation, they're still in positive territory, which is an improvement over what we saw in 2022, 2023. So those are good signs. That's what macroeconomists are looking at. And we look at those because if the economy falls into recession, that's bad for everybody, well, almost everybody, and it's especially bad for those who are already struggling. But to reconcile that with what the pessimism that we see in the PPIC statewide survey and other surveys of how people are feeling about their economic chances, it's like over 70% of Californians are expecting bad times financially for the state over the next 12 months. And I think there's two things driving that. One is that the overall aggregate indicators are not reflecting the individual's experience, the family's experience, a business owner's experience, and that's real. I mean, as Lorena said, unemployment has jumped a lot for young workers. It's also jumped a lot more for Black women, for Latino men than for other groups. Job growth has been strongest in the healthcare sector, but it's been shrinking in some other sectors. So depending on where you sit, really your opportunities do vary substantially. The other factor in my mind is that, and this is not really, this is more of a kind of hypothesis, is that the last 5 or 6 years of real economic uncertainty and volatility has reminded us, has triggered us around how people feel about their economic opportunity over the long term. So, Californians are also pretty pessimistic about how the state's children will fare when they reach adulthood. And I think they're real questions about, not just kind of making ends meet, but feeling secure, feeling like you can invest in things that move you ahead. So, and I think there's big questions about that today. And I think that's kind of the underpinning of, the economic pessimism that goes beyond just those macro indicators that we're tracking.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sarah. I wonder, Lorena, in labor, how is that reconciled? These broader positive implications, but the feeling of anxiety about the future.
Well, I think the feeling of anxiety is realistic. There's a couple things going on, and workers are not dumb. They hear everything in their workplace and what's going on. So a few things. We're starving the beast again, right? Not enough revenue going into local government, into schools, into the public sector. And the workers know they're getting that information at the table. They're getting pink slip. They understand that there are hard times coming down. What does that mean? That means they're anxious about their job staying there. They're anxious because they're being told that public sector cannot afford raises at certain times. They keep getting told honestly by their labor leaders, in fact, that we're running into hard times. This is getting hard to budget in our local governments, our state government, and of course our school boards are starting to tighten up, right? So that causes anxiety. I think the other thing is in the healthcare sector. Yes, we know that the healthcare sector continues to grow, but we also know that cut in Medi-Cal is coming. We know that that's an enormous cut. And so when your job is in that field and you're seeing rural hospitals shut down or potentially shut down, you're seeing healthcare being taken away by regular folks because we're not subsidizing basically, or we're not going to subsidize Obamacare. You're seeing Medi-Cal being taken away from that's patients. That's who's your client, right? They see that coming. They know what the news is, and they get nervous. Is my hospital going to close? Is it, is my job at risk? That's rational. And then you have AI, and I cannot overstate the fear that is and realistically is with workers. In fact, less so in organized workers, because we've been able to at least come to the table sometimes and bargain this issue. But this threat of AI taking your job, and there are a lot of people, of course, in the world that'll say, oh, it's overstated, oh, it's not good enough. And we agree that workers will prevail eventually. However, we have also billboards going up. Get rid of humans, right? Get a machine. What do you think that does to the psyche of individuals who work for a living? The fact that we keep hearing 30% of jobs, 50% of jobs, the computer could now replace you. We're seeing it in sectors like journalism and in the movie industry, if you will, how quickly this is coming in and taking people's actual jobs. So I think those three things, I think workers, our people who work for a living are being very rational because they're hearing it not only in the news, they're seeing it in their workplace, it's coming for them, and so that, I think, produces that anxiety.
Thank you. That fear of the future is real, and it hasn't hit. We know some things will be phased in. And Lance, I'd love to hear from you on this because you have such a broad experience across different kinds of businesses. How do you answer that reconciliation of broader positive, but this fear of the future, this sort of trepidation?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot rolled up in that, and I'm sorry if I scared everybody earlier with my prognosis of the patient. We are going to be very healthy here in California. As was said before, we are the most resilient state because we're the biggest state, we're the best state. We've got all the things going for us, but it requires our attention. We just can't ignore it, and that's why I circled back to the infrastructure side of the equation. And as it relates to manufacturing, what I find interesting is interesting, but what our members and manufacturers in California find interesting, I find fascinating, because it's their priorities that we really have to focus on. And it is that anxiety about the future. Can we really sustain California as we know it into the future? And there's some that say, it's going to be too expensive. We already admit it is expensive, but it might be too expensive. And that's what really gives me concern and pause. Can we fix our electric grid? Absolutely. But it's going to take some time and effort and resource to do so, and we must. Can we fix our highways? We absolutely must. And can we fix the future for the younger Californians so that they can excel? And that really is at the core, I think, of the economy. And we've been able to avoid a recession, thankfully, for a time, but it will come. What gives me a little bit of hope and optimism is that the nature of our economy now is different than in previous economies. We are so diversified here in California. There's not really one segment that if it halts or falters a little bit, the whole thing comes apart, like a Jenga game. So we have that going for us. And we're a massive economy, fourth largest in the world. My kind of comment on that is we're doing everything we can to become the 6th or the 7th. But we still remain the 4th. And if we just hold on to that, harness it, and manage expectations into the future, I think we're going to be set for the next 10 to 20 years.
Thank you. I'm going to start with you, Lorena, on this question. We hear a lot about affordability. It's been mentioned in the legislature. It's in the papers. It's part of one of the responses in the PPIC survey. How do you define affordability, and what does it mean to you in terms of an approach?
It's interesting because I guess for everybody, I was just thinking about our roads, we have to make sure our roads continue to get fixed, and yet we have, in the name of affordability, a Democrat running for governor in the tech sector that is saying we're going to cut the gas tax and not talking about how we're going to fund the roads. That's what goes into the roads. So yes, you may save a little bit at the pump, which we all need to save. And yet, if you're driving an old car and you're hitting potholes and you don't have the ability, your business, and trying to move something from one place to another place, where does that revenue come from, right? That's jobs for us, but it's also the roads create a different sort of affordability issue that gas is causing. One of the biggest problems we have, and nobody will like this in this room, I guarantee you, because it gets everybody a little nervous, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, is we have no control, and I'm not suggesting, I'm not coming in here and saying we should have price controls, but we have no control over the private sector and what they've been doing to individuals. As the rich get richer, and that's just a reality, and these corporations grow and grow, they are charging us more. I don't know what government has the will to do about this. So whether it's the oil companies and profits that they're making, and I will say that the problems we've created for them around our refineries is very real, but whether it's grocery stores and the problems they're creating, now surveillance pricing, right? They're going to charge you whatever they think you can afford at the time that you're shopping, whatever desperation you may feel. That is a problem. They want to bring in self-checkout, get rid of checkers, get rid of those good union jobs, yet none of those prices go down. In fact, they're finding creative, innovative ways to figure out what your desperation price point is. That's an affordability crisis. We've seen it with Ticketmaster and concerts, even entertainment. How much more can we take from you? Now, that's real affordability issues that people don't like to talk about, right? They said, well, we just need gas prices to go down or electricity prices to go down. We need all of that, but we need those at the very top to quit taking so much from working people and continuing to push, to pad their own wallets and not put it back into the system. And so nobody likes to hear that. I'm not suggesting price controls yet. But I will guarantee you this, we are running up against a crisis, right? So what we used to think of as affordability, like, oh, we've just got to make it affordable, right? We got to build more houses and then everybody will be happier. No, we have to have rent control. And I know nobody likes that. But guess what? That's a reality. The rent's too damn high and people can't afford it. Right? That's not what people in rooms like this usually want to hear, maybe some of our students, but we got to have some limits, right? When the airlines gouge you and charge you so much and then leave you at the airport with, for days and don't have to now even return those fees, that's your time, that's your money. I mean, we are getting hit on everything. And as the federal government continues to allow the titans of industry to take more and more from regular people, we have to either step in and do something about it or it's just going to get worse.
Thank you. Lance.
So the affordability crisis is real. We often compare ourselves to other states just for sense checking, and the cost of energy, the cost of labor, the cost of inputs in other states is cheaper than California. Just a reality. We do have the opportunity here, and great weather, great people, great society. So yeah, we could pay a little bit more. But if we did the root cause analysis as to why some of these things do cost so much, I think we might find there's some room for improvement. The fees on new home construction are such that it does price those homes out of the consumer's pocket, which is really unfortunate. And we could identify those fewer things that cost the most incrementally and start to have a conversation about, let's fix that. I'm perplexed that California's energy costs tend to be twice the national average. And I'll go back to my infrastructure comment. We built the grid in the 1930s. It's 100 years later. Nothing in California looks like the economy or the society that it looked like in 1930. Nothing. But there we are. Highway system too. Water systems, probably built for a state, 20 million people, give or take. There's 40 million residents in California right now trying to live off infrastructure for 20 million people. Those are root cause issues that if we could address, I think not all of these issues, other issues would go away, but it certainly gave us an opportunity to really address them in a way that we need to. And I'll kind of close with this, that for too long, and Lorena and I were on a stage, I think maybe a year ago, we kind of made this pledge to each other, and I make it again to everybody here. Let's stop talking past each other. And we've done that, but we all need to stop talking past each other. If there's a problem in California, we can all solve it, but we can only all solve it if we're working together. And I stand by that wholeheartedly on behalf of our industry sector, but me as well. We will sit down and talk. I think the first meeting I had, actually, when I took this role, was in your office when you were chair of the Assembly Appropriations Committee. I came in and we were both kind of like this, because she was expecting a certain thing as I was. But I said, Madam Chair, we're going to act differently. We're going to come early. We're going to talk with you. We're going to share information. And she was relieved. So was I, because the reaction was what I intended. But it's on that basis that we can have these conversations, and I think find the solutions that are necessary for the state of California so that high school students have optimism about the future, because I did when I left high school 100 years ago, but they're leaving high school soon. So let's make California a better place for them.
Thank you for those answers. I think it's really important that all of us hear what both of you have said about resilience of California, the ability of California to solve it, the fact that we have a lot of our tools in our tool chest to solve it, and it is about talking to one another and sharing different points of view that are maybe on polarizing continuums, but still sharing that point of view to get to a solution. From a labor economist point of view, Sarah, when people say affordability, what does that mean to you?
Well, we make it technical, and we think affordability is about the resources you have to purchase the goods and services that you desire. And you could, try to quantify that. We do that in our poverty work. But affordability is clearly about more than just that resources in, resources out equation right now. I would just want to add, because I think these were incredible points that I agree with in terms of needing to subsidize where markets don't work and also make sure that markets are working as well as they can. But the kind of part of affordability that we didn't touch on as much is the earning side, the resources side. And I do think that gets to kind of how we are opening up opportunity for more Californians, for young adults to kind of build the skills for the future, for us to address the kind of barriers that many Californians face to working as much as they like or accessing the kind of jobs and opportunities that they would like to, whether it's access to childcare, transportation, housing, and all of that, I think is a critical piece for us to kind of balance out with some of the price issues that are a little bit harder for state government sometimes to tackle.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I'm hearing from all of you really that affordability is a component part kind of concern. And that when we look at any component part, whether it's the roads and the gas tax that goes into fixing the roads, we really do need to think about them and think of them holistically to fix them. But continuing to call affordability something large and vague means we'll never get to it. So really it's pieces. We come at it in pieces and we solve it in pieces, but always trying to put the big picture together.
Can I add a little bit to that? So affordability, we're looking at cost and how can we get up to meet that challenge of the cost. I think we're requiring ourselves to look at it a little bit differently. Why is it so expensive? Let's bring those into harmony rather than trying to always play catch up. And I think if we approach it with a little bit different thinking, we can really get at some of those things to bring those together so that the axes are aligned and things are better. But we are in an affordability crisis, but we need to think about it just a little bit differently. It's not just one. It's actually a harmonization of the two.
Right, and I'm heartened to know this is top of mind for the legislature. My next question sort of goes into the affordability issue potentially, and I'm going to start with you, Lorena, on artificial intelligence. Every day we read, use, or hear about it in lots of different ways, and ways that are where they're doing the work of humans and faster than humans across all sectors. Do you use AI in your personal or work life? You don't have to answer one of those.
Oh, I will.
And how do you see AI, you've talked a little bit about this, impacting the California economy and labor market, and or how do we help our young people and our old people to prepare for that?
I'm more than happy. There is no way, everything is AI enabled. I've learned that, right? So I could say, I don't use ChatGPT. I don't, utilize any type of AI on purpose, or do we, in our workplace, we turn off all the AI-enabled when we have the opportunity to. However, if I Google something, AI is in there. If I pick up my phone, AI is in there. So I'm very well aware that whether I like it or not. And that's true with so many technologies that we're seeing today. And this is important to me. It's a little bit of a position of pride I put myself in, but I'm going to say all these things that we've introduced into our lives to make lives very convenient. I always say I'm a working mom. I have 5 kids. Most of them are out of the house now. Thank God. I have 2 more. But as we do this, I don't use Instacart or DoorDash. I never have. I go to the grocery store and I buy food and cook at home. I don't use Uber and Lyft unless that is the absolutely only option out there. I still use taxis or drive places. I don't use AI, and it's amazing. I'm not unable to get done everything that I need to do, and I challenge anyone to say that they have this really busy job and just absolutely have to rely on this. We have decided that this is a convenience. Maybe it is for some people and they really want to. However, we are missing out on a lot. AI is starting to creep into, obviously, every kind of job. And the AI companies would have you believe that they can replace any kind of worker. Now, we know that's questionable. We're seeing it. I just saw last night My husband loves to send me things that he thinks will make me laugh because he thinks sometimes I sound like Doomsday on AI. And he's like, you'll love this. Look at this robot. They couldn't get it to quit dancing. Did you guys see this? I guess it was somewhere in Cupertino or something. It was supposed to be serving food, and it ended up smashing tables. And then they couldn't get it to quit dancing. And I'm like, that brought me a little joy and a little fear. Yes, cool equipment. Does it have a kill switch? And does it have a kill switch is my common question these days. But I have kids I have a kid who is graduating from college. Our professors are coming across a problem. He said, "Mom, do you know what a blue book is?" I was like, do I know what a blue book is? It's a return back because we are learning as this encroaches on all of our lives that we might need to do the return back to some basics as well. But that being said, is one of the scariest things for me in particular is people don't understand AI. And so often these companies are selling products that they swear can replace human beings. And a couple things are happening. We have a billionaire class in California that is trying not to pay their fair share. Rich people who don't pay their fair share in California. So our public entities, whatever they are starting, resources are drying up. They're starting to say, well, we got to cut back. We got to cut back. Where do you cut? You cut labor costs, of course, in the public sector. That's where we're going to cut. Then these same companies that are kind of causing this kind of stress come in and say, we have a great product. Oh, you have to do layoffs? That's all right. We have a great product. AI can fix this. We can do you a chat box. We can, replace a 911 operator with AI. We can, replace anyone with AI, and it'll do just as good of a job. And you have people making these procurement decisions that maybe they are able to understand, but as you lay off people who are skilled and can do that job, you're going to replace it with AI, and that's not necessarily going to fix the problem. We're also seeing where some of those contracts have already gone bust up, basically, and the fact that if they don't work as well, then what do you do? So you've invested all this money into a technology in order to replace human beings. You've lost the human capital that's required and the knowledge to actually do that job, or you've de-skilled them, or basically they've moved out of state, whatever it is. And now you've got a situation where the service isn't being done because we've been made those promises, the person isn't there, and we as taxpayers are footing the bill. And we as taxpayers are those of us who work for a living and aren't hoarding money in the terms of billions upon billions of dollars. That's not sustainable in an economy, and that's something that we've got to address. But that is just a simple aspect. I know that they're introducing robots that weld, that maybe could work in the fields. Now, are they going to actually? No. I mean, I've gone to CES, I've watched, I see. You still can't get a robot that can pick a tomato without squeezing the tomato too far. There's a lot of room still that cannot be done, and we know this. And may it come someday. It may, but that doesn't cause me as much stress. There's robots who weld. That makes me a little bit more nervous than I think the tomatoes picking robot, right? But that is something that we know AI should enable the user, the worker, to have a better job, a safer job, a more productive job, but it should be worker-centered. We shouldn't be replacing workers, human workers, with AI.
Thank you. I've heard that in some respects as augmented intelligence. But Lance, in the manufacturing, in the business community, what about the AI and its impact?
So I have a self-confession to make as I answer that question. Artificial intelligence is the only kind I have. It's an enabler, at the end of the day. My son recently started a new job in the financial sector, went from one company to the next, and he's very proud of the 8-page report that was prepared about his new job, his new role, and his new company. And I said, wow, it had charts, it had graphs, it was amazing. I said, you put all that effort into your new job? And he said, no, I didn't do it. And I said, well, who did that for you? And he said, my friend Claude. Literally wrote an 8-page report for a new job he was about to start, and it was perfect. But it wasn't his new job yet because he hadn't shown up. It's an enabler. I'm going to go way back. For those of you that grew up in the Bay Area, the Oakland A's were very famous for their Moneyball concept, their team of the late 80s, early 90s. Billy Beane was the general manager. had some scientists from Harvard develop this system for drafting players. And he only drafted players that would not swing at a first pitch. So he went through all the college baseball players before the draft. Who doesn't swing at the first pitch? Because that batter is less likely to strike out. And he didn't want his players striking out all the time. So he built this team, very successful team, based on data, lots of data. And it turned into one of the greatest baseball stories, I think, really, of ever. As it relates to manufacturing, I served on the governor's Future Work Commission, and it was interesting. It was pre-COVID. COVID happened right when we were getting into the good part of the work, and automation was really we weren't even saying AI, it was just automation. And automation can be a euphemism for efficiency, but there will always be people behind the machines, always. I used the example of the Jelly Belly factory. There was a person working, lifting 25-pound pallets of jelly beans from the floor all the way up to shoulder height. That's not good for your shoulders. So he worked with the engineers at Jelly Belly and devised a picker that he controlled with a joystick to pick up every single pallet, not just the ones that were above shoulder. So it does have this opportunity to drive efficiency and in some cases worker safety. It's not going to replace the person behind the machine, and that's critical. The only job that was deemed replaced by mechanization in our Future Work Commission from the 1950s until 2019 when we had the commission was the elevator operator. That was it.
I'd argue, though, anybody that's been to swing space might want the elevator operator to come back.
We'd all vote for that.
Traffic
but
control.
The conclusion for me, it's an enabler. The internet connected us all. We adapted. AI, we're going to adapt too.
That's good to hear, I think, and it's really important for our younger people to hear that as well, that it's a skill set, it's not going to displace you, that you'll be integrating it. And I want to be mindful of time, so I'm going to I'm going to ask Sarah, and then I have another question, so mindful of time. Sarah, you study labor and workforce, what about AI?
I think we're at the early stages, and I think it's really good to think about all these potential paths and how they would shape our economy and our opportunity in different ways. Right now, though, the last that I looked, about 9% of employers said they're using AI. I read it's a little higher in manufacturing, not too much though. So I do think we're at early stages of this new technology being deployed. And the big question is, will it follow the path of previous technological revolutions from the car to the assembly line to the computer that actually created more jobs and wealth potential? Or will it be different? And so, I don't want to get out beyond my skis on this. I think it's critical for us to think about our systems and structures, like in education and workforce, connecting with key sectors, with business leaders to understand how the new technology is being used and how we can make sure that it kind of meets the objectives that Lorena and Lance have identified.
Thank you. That's positive. I appreciate that. So I only have a few more minutes left, and I want to cover both of these questions. So I'm going to ask you to allot your time accordingly for the 3 minutes that we have. I'm going to start with you, Lance, and this is a two-part question, unrelated to each other, but one is the impact of tariffs, and the other is the billionaire wealth tax. 30 seconds each, then I'm going to move to Lorena.
What was the first one?
The tariffs.
Tariffs are the most disruptive thing to an economy. I'd rather countries negotiate and solve their trade issues that way. On the billionaire tax, it is a cost that would have an impact. I am very concerned when a billionaire relocates his domicile to another state and it has a material effect on the budget. Not so much that that person moved, but that could have a material effect on our budget. We need to rethink how we finance state government.
Thank you. Lorena, same questions. Tariff and billionaire wealth tax.
The Trump tariffs have been implemented incorrectly and chaotically and in a way that has not helped our economy. Could tariffs help the American farmer? Absolutely. Could it have helped in manufacturing in the past? Absolutely. It's not targeted, it's not smart, and we're paying the price for it. The billionaires tax is, we from organized labor have not taken a position yet. We don't do it until it's on the ballot. However, I will say this. The devil's in the details, and while I know there's anxiety about what happens when billionaires leave, the bottom line is this: billionaires and almost to be trillionaires are not paying their fair share. We cannot have 206 people in California have this much extreme wealth that they continue to pull out of the work of regular folks and have this kind of income inequality and have our democracy work. The billionaires have created the situation, and quite frankly, the AI billionaires and the big tech billionaires are the ones who are mostly to blame, who have decided that they are going to buy democracy. They've decided they're going to buy all the data about you. They decided they're going to buy your children's attention span and everything about them, and ultimately hoard all of the money. That does not allow us to live in a thriving democracy. There is a warning light going off, and I think people need to realize that. If we don't tackle billionaires on a national level, if we don't tackle the threat of trillionaires on a national level, then we are going to see authoritarianism, as we're already starting to see, kick in. We're going to see a totally, if anybody had ever, I always give the example that I used to go to Mexico growing up when things were really bad in Mexico City, and you would see the wealthy, right, with these large fences in front of their yards, and you'd have somebody out front with an Uzi, and then you had all the poor masses over here. That's what we're building towards. Democracy doesn't flourish like that. And we're not being very realistic about the fact that that kind of money hoarding is going on.
Thank you, Loren. Now, you get 1 minute also, Sarah, for tariffs and billionaire tax.
I'll be quick. On tariffs, I don't think we've seen the full economic effect of them yet because the costs have not been fully passed on to the consumer. So I worry about that. Even with the volatility we're yet to see on the tariff kind of policy decisions. Research is TBD, undecided on the impact of kind of a billionaire's tax on what that will do to relocation, on the potential impacts on revenue. So I'm watching. I don't have a stronger answer than that.
We'll wait for some data, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I have a number of other questions, but we're at the point in our PPIC presentations where we ask you what's on your mind for Q&A. And our panelists will do their best to respond. It's a 15-minute period, and so what I'd like to do is first let you know that there are folks out there from PPIC who have a microphone, and when you raise your hand, they will come to you, and they will hold on to the microphone, and if you give your name and state your question to the panel, that's how it works. But our first question is going to go to the students from McClatchy. Thank you, Yancy, for bringing over the mic to whoever is going to ask the question.
My question is, what questions do you think AI is going to open up in like the agricultural and environmental field, in like the
What's your name?
near future?
What's your
Vivian.
name? Vivian?
Mm-hmm.
I'll start. It's going to open up our horizon because it's going to be a massive amount of data to help us make decisions. That's why I use the Moneyball example. AI at the end of the day is data. And how we use it really becomes the issue. How it's deployed becomes the issue, but it can very much be used for good. And I think in those particular cases that you asked about, it absolutely could.
Anyone else care to answer?
My concern is that AI just is worker-centered, right? And I even think in some of the things, it's a little less ag and econ, but we are environmental, but kind of along that, like big rigs, right? What's driving from one place to another, and people really want, some people, maybe the governor, but definitely the AI companies really want to replace, for example, big rig drivers with driverless. The problem with that, if you don't have worker-centered, is that's a massive loss of jobs. That is also creating a danger that maybe what we should be looking at is how does AI supplement the safety of that driver? How do we make sure our roads are actually safer, but keep a human operator on, a big rig? Likewise, data might be good to decide, given water, given this, what kind of planting we do, or where we're doing it, or what's the best place, or how we can reuse the water, yes, but you still need people involved in that.
Thank you. So I like that we're sort of coining a phrase here at PPIC at this panel, and that is worker-centered AI. Not just AI alone, but worker-centered AI. Any other questions from the audience? And I see a hand raised. Ruby, thank you for bringing the mic over.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Olga Sid. I have two questions. The first is, how is the financial manufacturing companies working with the schools to prepare students for the future to work with that AI and to get jobs? And the other one, there was a recent article in the internet from Bloomberg Financial identifying that there will be a recession within the next 12 months because of the increase in crude oil and the stagnant economy. What are your opinions on that?
Thank you for raising workforce. I'm sorry I didn't earlier. That's a critical matter, particularly the workforce of the future, and for manufacturing in particular. Our industry sector has historically had employees that stay 30 or 40 years in the sector, and they're retiring out. And the incoming workforce has a little bit higher velocity of what they intend and want to do. But we can't leave anybody behind. And I was shocked last year at an education conference where we were all informed from the stage that less than half of 18-year-old graduating seniors in California go to four-year university. Less than half. So what about the most? We need to really focus on the most, and whether it's a community college or a certificate or a credential to come into an economic sector that will provide them a great future and career for them and their families, that's where we need to focus a lot of our effort. And we're not right now. We're telling young people, if you don't go to a four-year college, you really aren't going to amount to much in the California economy. And the opposite is true. And we need to embrace that and train and prepare for any kind of job they may want to do. And the manufacturing door is wide open, particularly because of these retirements. We'll welcome everybody into the sector. You can go and grow and do a wonderful job. And I'm not an economist, so I'll defer the oil pressure price to somebody else. But thank you for raising the workforce issue.
I wouldn't be an economist if I didn't admit there was a risk of recession in the next 12 months, pretty much at any point in time. So certainly something that we're watching. There's so much volatility in prices due to the war. Looking at data today, the gas prices and the increase, isn't in the range of what we experienced during the initial period of the Ukraine conflict. I think it's hard to say, and if I had a crystal ball, I would tell you, but I don't. I think the economy is diverse and is less reliant on just gas than it was decades ago. So that kind of tempers my concern, I guess, about the risk of recession, but certainly something that we're watching, and Californians are obviously concerned about that too.
Thank you.
I would say on workforce education, I'm just going to be a little skeptical on this right now. Obviously, there are trades and things we need to train people to do. But I will say this, and I think about this all the time, maybe because I have kids, college-age kids, or kids who just came out of college, is, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, we'd have sat here and said, absolutely, we need to get more kids into STEM. We need computer programmers. We need to tell them that. There are so many kids graduating. My son's about to graduate from UC Santa Barbara with those types of degrees and no job, because all of a sudden their jobs are taken away. And that was the advice of all the economists and all the smart people who are saying this is what you got to learn. If you learn this skill, you're going to be fine. Oh, by the way, now you're in debt because of all the student loans, and you have a skill that is is the first to have gone by AI, by the way, right? So we've always kind of had this approach, and I do believe we've got to train people for jobs that exist. But I also think we've got to get back to thinking of students as people, as individual human beings. What's being lost in this AI revolution, if you will, is this idea that we need to teach them how to talk to one another. I'm so proud. My son's hopefully going to be a union organizer. That's great. He's learning great. He's going to have great skills. Those are interpersonal skills that we have gotten away from because they're in front of a computer, and that is all they're learning. What is going to matter? Creativity. Do we have the things that a computer can't do? These are going to be, we need to invest more into the holistic aspect of individual kids and people and have a society that functions again. Part of our problem is our society is crumbling because we've lost so much of that. So I respect economists and people who say, well, we've got to have this degree and we've got to train people to do this, and you've got to learn how to use a computer and you've got to learn how to rein in AI. You know what you got to learn how to do, students? I love you all. Learn how to talk to each other. Learn how to go out on dates again. Learn how to, I'm serious, this is what we need to do. We need that human interaction, and you need to spend time with each other and enjoy life a little bit, because this has gotten out of control. We decided this is what you should go into. It was a lie. Enjoy your life. Enjoy each other. Get off your phones. All right. Sorry, I'm a mom.
Getting wild hand gestures here. and shake hands. That's also some advice. Giselle.
Thank you to all the panelists. I'm not sure that we're thinking about all this right. And to give you an example, there was talk about and all this emphasis on the cost of food. I don't find much to agree with in the Trump administration, but one thing I do agree with is with Robert Kennedy's emphasis on quality food. In France, you have 11,400 ingredients that are considered food, or 400 that are considered food. Here it's 11,400. So we subsidize with ingredients that we don't recognize, that we've never heard of, that nobody understands, that are on the back of the package. And both parties, Democrats and Republicans, forever have been hooked on cheap food. And cheap food, an ingredient of cheap food is cheap labor that results in conditions that insult our sensibilities. Not to mention the effect of early diabetes, of people that are overweight, badly overweight, and then we subsidize them on the other end, with health insurance and all the pills and everything else. And then as it relates to AI, what's wrong with having more time? How many people do we both know that we all know that work 2 jobs and are raising kids? And, it's one thing to have enough money, but if you don't have enough time, it's just as bad. Or having enough time and no money, that's not very good either. So why can't we find some balance? The fact that people will have more time, that we can work to a 4-day workday or a 3-day workday. Shouldn't that be a goal? Wouldn't people's quality of life be better if we could figure out how to do it, whether it's a universal income or whatever? I mean, I think that's what we need to be looking at. There have always been transitions in our history from one industry to another and adjustments, and I think this is another one. It's a little more challenging.
Thank you, Rusty. Any thoughts about that?
Well, we oppose universal basic income. I'll be very clear. We believe in the value of work. That does not mean, though, to your point, that work needs to be 40, 60, 80 hours a week, quite frankly. And the fact that people are working 2 jobs, it's because they're not making enough money to sustain a life. So to say, well, you can just work 3 days a week, and the government's going to give you a little check, well, I doubt it. Who's funding that check? We just talked about the billionaire's tax, right? They're going to leave the state because we're going to ask them to pay a little bit, I don't know if we will, and that they won't even notice and it'll make up within a year, but suddenly we're going to be able to write a check to everybody in California and they're going to live nice and only have to work 3 days. But you've hit you've hit it on the spot, and this is what I think our policy agenda does not line up with the reality. So if we're saying you're going to lose hours, you're going to lose jobs, okay, pay people more. So maybe a 4-day work week is a full-time work week, right? But that doesn't mean that you get to pay people less than you would pay them under 40 hours a week. It just means that they're working 1 less day. I'm for that, but I don't see how we implement that when we can't even get corporations today to pay a living wage at 40 hours a week. I think that is the real problem. The other question, and I've sat in rooms and just been shocked, the same people who will say all these jobs, oh, AI is going to take these jobs and you all have nothing to do. They'll complain that the age of retirement is at 65. So, well, we should push that up. People can work longer. Well, I'm sorry. I've spent all week with my unions, but it's like, why would we do that? Why don't we supplement? Why don't we put more money into Social Security so people can actually retire at retirement age and people coming into the workforce could have a job? So our policies should line up with the availability of jobs, but that requires us forcing corporations, forcing all this wealth accommodation to actually redistribute it, and people don't like that.
Thank you, Lorena. Before I go to the next question, Lance, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, great question, Russ. Appreciate that. When I was on the Future Work Commission, we talked about this notion that I raised because I see too many of manufacturing employees driving all over the state to get to work. You should be able to work, thrive, and live within 30 minutes of each other. And 30 minutes is different here than it is in Los Angeles. 30 minutes is probably about a half a mile. But you should be able to do all those things so you can get to a soccer game, so you don't spend 3 hours each way in your car contributing to the environment and impacting the roads and the cost. 30 minutes, and I don't think that's too much to ask. What it requires, though, is for us to rethink everything about the economy.
Yep.
How can we get everybody 30 minutes within each other? It is possible, and AI might be an enabler because we can have the data to figure it out. But you get caught on the 205 freeway from the Central Valley of the Bay Area every day. It's painful.
Yes.
I had to do it for a short while. Painful. We need to rethink that, and it'll get the time back that we need.
And Lance, what's wrong with if you've got 18,000 truck drivers that are going to be displaced because of automatic driving features? Before a trucking company puts that in, what's wrong with making them pay for the retraining of all those workers? Makes sense to me. So that they can find, so that they're employed. They're the ones that are impacted.
These are good ideas. We have one more question for our 1 minute left at the Sheraton. Ruby.
Hi, my name is Wesley. I'd like to ask for all of your thoughts on gender and how that impacts the economy and economic outlooks. I think we've seen a lot of growth in sectors that have been traditionally, women-coded, care economy type jobs, and we've seen contraction or offshoring of jobs in manufacturing and other sectors that have been male-dominated. So, curious what your thoughts are on economic future and how maybe we can bring parity or more inclusive workspaces on both sides so economic opportunity can benefit everyone.
Thank you. 15 seconds each for everyone. I used to be a timer in my former life. 15 seconds each, please.
Manufacturing is the most democratized it's ever been. We're proud of that. CMJ tends to reflect the industry sector. Our board of directors is 40% female.
Thank you. 15 seconds each, please. Lorena.
We need to invest more in caregivers, absolutely. That will help level it, but we also need to enforce the laws that exist today, which could prevent some of the problems we're seeing.
Thank you. Sarah.
We've had long-term stagnation in women's participation in the labor market after a lot of growth. So that is one of the big concerns that I see, especially with the shrinking workforce that is going to support a growing older and younger population. We need to address some of those disparities.
Thank you. We've had great questions from you. We wish we had more time, great comments, great observations, good ideas. Let's do a round of applause for these three experts. Several things. We hope that you take away from this conversation the resilience of California, working together, getting off your phone, shaking hands, having conversations, augmented intelligence, work-centered, people-centered intelligence. And as part of the people-centered intelligence piece, we will send you a survey to ask you how we can improve our program and use that data for our next speaker series event. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to you. Thank you for coming. Safe travels.